are the longer days making me lazier? That's the only conclusion that I can come to, because now that I have a longer window with which to film, I found myself in the past couple of weeks pushing it later and later and later, to the point where I'm off schedule with my dancing, completely off schedule. This is the first time it's happened in a whole year. The entire pandemic, I've been very disciplined, doing a new choreography every 2 weeks, regardless of how my body felt. But as a woman, that can severely impact the outcome of the dancing when you have your friend. So I thought this cycle, I would actually change up my schedule so that I was free and clear to dance without those bodily restrictions. And would you know it, I completely threw myself off schedule. So I'm trying to remember what I should have actually been doing, and if I recall correctly, I'm actually probably going to be 2 weeks behind. So the choreography that I've been choreographing this week and the last couple of weeks, I should have actually performed a whole week ago, I now realize. But I thought I had all the time in the world for some reason. I've done my math poorly, so it is what it is. It is what it is. I'm just gonna have to continue on. Maybe what I'll do is I'll compress 2 new choreographies in one time slot, or I'm just gonna let one of them go. The one that I'd have to let go would be a new breaking choreography, and how do I feel about that? I feel overall it's just a mental mistake that I made rather than true and pure laziness. Sometimes when you're in a productive mood and you're following a schedule, if you just follow it to the T without thinking too much, you tend to have reflexive actions. You just go one milestone after the other after the other. The only other time I had some difficulty was, again, the same thing where my period was interfering. And to be completely honest, I think that is an aspect that does affect women in their performance. So much so that I think people at the high performance athlete level actually take some pills to regulate their periods, because they'd have to. The fact that even me doing casual fun dancing, I can be impacted so much, would state that if you were doing some real shit, it'd be even worse. So the one time that I had experience with the situation was before departing for the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. I realized, oh shit, what if I've timed it wrong? What if I'm due to snorkel and or scuba dive at the reef while I'm on my period? And that just happened to happen. And there's really no good solution to that, I guess, or none that I've come across that works well for me. So that is what it is. It just is what it is, and that's my excuse for being completely off schedule. I think maybe if I compress one, I'll be fine. Okay, so I've just done the mental math, and I am indeed off by just one cycle of dance, which I should be able to make up for next week with 2 new choreographies. I've done that before. It's just that I'm wondering why I got so completely sidetracked. And part of the reason why is, again, the oft-mentioned rockumentary. I've basically allowed myself to expand outward and outward and outward with the content, because I just have a lot better content in reviewing everything than I remembered. My general editing MO had been, if it was a highlight reel type moment, I should have remembered being a part of it, and that's worked generally speaking. But over the past 4 to 6 months, I've actually watched every single clip I've ever filmed, and I've realized that a lot has escaped my memory. That's just how much footage I have. If I were to probably watch for 40 hours a week, I have months and months and months of clips, which is why it's taken me so long to basically do even a first parse. So when I call it a first edit, it really is just me even isolating the best clips. And now it's difficult because what do? You just string a bunch of highlights together over a whole hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. I'm now on my 4th hour of first edits. So that's why I decided to just turn things into a series, but even then, that presupposes that I'll have some sort of contiguous storyline to tell, which I'm sure I'll be able to once I really think about it. But again, part of my problem is that I have many, many concepts that I want to weave into this thing. So can I do it in a way that makes sense and that is new, as in new territory? Well, the reason why I want things to be new is less about my own vanity and more because that's just the kind of creative person I am. If we're talking about something that's already been done, people who are better at that have done it better than me already. So what's the point in rehashing the same thing over and over again? There are people out there, filmmakers, travel filmmakers, who have captured everything I've wanted to, and they've done it to much better technical specs. I'm aiming for an output of 1080p, which gives me very little to work with in terms of my editing because I have a source of mostly 1080p. And that's because this was source footage for really my own souvenir purposes up until this year when I really firmly decided that I wanted to make a rockumentary project out of all of my footage. But people who had the intent to make something from the beginning had the benefit of upgrading their specs from the very beginning. So many of the filmmakers who have an output source of 4K probably were filming in 8K and above. Now that just makes your logistics that much more difficult. They just expand outwards and outwards. So even as I am, I have fun, I do my own hobby thing, and I'm carrying easily 3 to 4 cameras for different purposes. So I have a 50x zoom that I use for animal encounters, especially wild animal encounters. I'm actually happiest with that because that type of camera came in most handy on the African wildlife safaris and generally any type of animal encounter where you're truly in the wild. Of course, in places where they've sequestered the animals, where you're guaranteed an interaction, you could use maybe any old camera if you have enough of that close intimacy that they allow on those kinds of encounters. But obviously in the African bush and in the wild, in the ocean, they're going to do what they do. They're free to roam as they please, so that means some sightings are quite a distance away. And in order for you to have anything worth anything, you would have had to have a 50x zoom lens. In fact, in a lot of my footage, we have background voices of people who were on safari with me commenting on how, yeah, that's probably the best functional camera to have. Because we also had some amateur to professional photographers, but the limit to photography is that they're trying to capture a one moment shot and basically throwing darts in the air, because even as a videographer, I was only able to capture the moments because I ran film long. I have a tendency to do that because I know intuitively life happens as it happens, and for you to have a hope in hell of capturing any one of those iconic shots, like a hippo yawning, you have to be filming and filming and filming. So the reason why I have so many clips is because I, in Africa, participated in over 30 to 40 safaris, and I long filmed everything. So every time I encountered an animal, I filmed, and I filmed, and I filmed, and I filmed. So now what I'm ending up with is that I can have highlights of the encounters over 30 to 40 safaris. But if you were just hoping to click, I mean, what are the chances that you're going to catch the animal exactly when it's doing the thing? You got, first of all, the right perspective, the right everything set up. You just have no choice. Now, the only downfall is that if you want still shots, you're probably going to have to take what are called screenshots or other methods. But I think with the high quality of the videography equipment, whatever hit you take in the pixel quality, you more than make up for actually catching the shot. Because if you ever watch behind the scenes of any of these National Geographic or BBC Earth documentaries, most people are spending months on end, and they have high-tech equipment, sometimes infrared cameras that are rolling 24 hours a day through daylight and nighttime. So the infrared is to catch animal encounters during nighttime. Of course, when you have that kind of budget, you're rolling, and sometimes they've been rolling for days, weeks, months at a time in order to get this much footage. So that's, I guess, the one tip I have for more me than anyone else. But if anyone's wondering how I've had those wild animal encounters featured on Fierce Fridays, it's been the 50x camera with an optical 50x. So ever since I was in the digital camera game, I've always been a high zoom fan, but it's only been the recent 50x that has had the stability. This year I've featured wild Antarctic and subantarctic penguins, which I trekked all over the subantarctic part of South America and Antarctica. And those we shot with a 30x zoom, which I still think is much better than no zoom at all. But one of the problems with a camera like that was out at 30x zoom is actually very hard to control with focus. So one thing I've appreciated about the 50x that I have right now is that it's actually very stable even at 50x. So yes, this is What the Fuck Wednesdays. I'm basically just riffing about a ton of stuff because the dancing has been quite honestly a grind, and I know that it's going to be like that sometimes, especially this recent situation. I think ever since I participated in David Goggins' 4x4x48 challenge, my choreography has still come to me, but it's been tougher, and I feel like it's in some ways smoother, but basicer than I'd been doing from before. So part of it is just understanding and being generous with yourself that you are gonna have the output that you have, and creativity comes as it comes, and just allow it the space to breathe the way that it wants to breathe. So if for the next couple of months the dancing creativity is harder to motivate, then I'll push my attention to the dancing. And for the dancing, I have very little accomplished vis-a-vis last week. I think I might have added one move. But maybe I'll just film to remind myself of what progress I've made. Even if it's little, it's something. I'll throw down some more moves after I just really grit through everything. The last, a couple weeks since the David Goggins 4x4x48 months, it's been a grind. And I expect it to be in some ways because I'm at that point where I've learned enough that I'm happy with my progress in breaking, but sometimes I'm in such awe at what the human body is capable of. The past couple of days I've been watching Dominic Di Tomasi, a Red Bull sponsored parkour specialist and free runner. So when I watch these guys just fucking run and flip the shit out of everything around them, the natural and man-made environment, I sometimes have this little inkling. Am I capable of that with practice? I'd argue that I obviously have some of the fundamentals built, but a lot of them are just difficult, I guess. I rewatched a couple of weeks ago my yoga progression, and although I've improved in many ways, some ways I've also developed some weird anxieties. The last couple of days, what I've developed is the anxiety on the wheel. So that's where you are on your back and you press up your body into an arch shape. That's called the wheel. And for some reason, I had this vision of being in the ocean and drowning. Like, what the fuck? So then I had trouble performing that wheel for 3 days straight, even after a rest day in between 2 of the days. So I was just wondering what is going on here, and now I can perform the wheel again, but stuff like that, where I truly wonder to myself, do I actually have anxiety with scuba diving? And this has been a question I've had to face more and more because we're coming upon a potential scuba diving season this year, and I've had to think hard and long to myself, okay? I'm probably dosing myself with my first shot at the end of May. So I think that'll be good first. But then I'll have to contest with maybe starting to do some of the activities that I would be doing. As much as dancing and editing video have been a lot of fun, I might be in the position to start thinking about at least some local things. Scuba diving is one of them. But for some reason, the more I've thought about scuba diving, the more I've had anxiety. So I had a dream about losing my regulator and drowning. I had some weird situation. Although, as much as I think it's weird, the more that I think about it, I think the reason why I had panic while doing that wheel is that I also try to be disciplined with my breathing. Actually, I am disciplined with my breathing when I'm performing these difficult advanced yoga positions, because that's the whole point. You're supposed to calm yourself even in the most difficult of these physical positions. So obviously when you're arcing your body like this, and that's facing upwards, you are really constricting your chest a lot. So trying to maintain that smooth in is difficult. I usually hold, depending on the move, anywhere from 3 to 6 full cycles of breath, 8 seconds each. So sometimes I'll be holding that wheel for up to a minute. And when you're trying to maintain your breath, and your breath is constricted, you're just thinking to yourself, oh, this reminds me a lot of scuba diving, and here I am again. Despite the fact that I'm PADI certified for open water scuba diving. I've been consistently struggling with it, the mental aspects of scuba diving, ever since I first started in 2015. That was the big mistake that I made. I decided that my first scuba diving encounter was going to be diving cageless with sharks. And while the sharks themselves were perfectly docile and well suited to such an excursion, the problem is that when you invest so much money into an experience like that, you have this added pressure of scuba diving and performing. So the thing is that they teach you what I consider to be too much in too little time, and if you fail, you've paid. A lot of adventure sports are like this because they just have such high incidences of failure, and I guess if they were to allow people to go on their own sweet time, they'd never turn a profit. For example, if you bungee jump, at least most places here in BC, well, at least the place I did it at Whistler, if you pay, you've paid already. Skydiving, same thing. If you've paid, you've paid. It's up to you to actually work up the courage to jump off that platform, out of that plane, otherwise ain't no refunds for that. The difference though is that I think they have a much more realistic timeline for you to learn the skills that you need in order to have the good experience. With scuba diving, there was none of that, and I'm still having some PTSD from it, so maybe that'll be something that always is there, but I'm feeling some sort of way about this. So while I'm trying to figure out what to do, I guess I'll throw down some more moves, maybe some breaking moves. For some reason, talking about it has put me into some sort of foul mood. I think I'm going to really have to work on it, because if I'm serious about continuing on my scuba diving path, I have to really get serious about my mindset about it. The next obvious progression would be to do my advanced scuba diving license, but to be completely honest, before I even think about that, I have to start getting real about what my real anxieties are. I think part of it is that I think the PADI licensing process is actually too easy. Yes, is this a humble brag? No, I think it's too little practical diving experience in the ocean, which is where a lot of your situation is going to be. So yes, we spend a lot of time prepping in the pool, which you obviously should do before you ever even think about entering the ocean. But I think that a weekend of diving for the types of skills that we have to learn is too little. So I think that's where I'm caught, because by all objective purposes, at least on paper, I passed the tests and I did really well on them. But when it came to my ocean dives, I actually made a couple of key errors that I'm wondering if I even know how to recover from them. So one error was at a really deep sea wall cliff. I actually buoyed all the way to the surface really quickly in a really rapid, crazy ascent, and luckily I was probably close enough to the surface for that to be okay. But if anybody knows, actually that's one easy way to injure yourself, is to ascend way too quickly, because of the risk of lung injury. Again, for when you're diving, there's a lot that you have to learn about pressure and how to control your buoyancy. And to be completely honest, I really probably would have failed myself if I were to be real and true about it. But, I mean, I'm licensed. Part of the reason why I rushed that licensing was because that was right before I was to embark on that Middle East trip that included my 100th country of Egypt. Egypt has what Jacques Cousteau, the inventor of modern scuba diving, considered to be the greatest scuba diving area in the world, the Red Sea. So, one of my scuba diving instructors really recommended against me attempting to do anything with the pyramids and spend all my time attempting the Red Sea. Now, obviously, we all know what I chose to do. I chose the pyramids as any reasonable person would because I had other people on that trip, my family with me, being my mother and brother. In many ways, using my mom as sort of the de facto timing test makes decisions very clear. So, for example, I have the chance probably to dive wherever I want to later, but the chances of her being able to visit the pyramids, and maybe even me, to be honest, we maybe only had that one chance, and now reviewing all that's happened, that was her one and only chance. And it might even have been my one and only chance, depending on my relationship with adventure travel. I've been throwing it out there a couple of times that maybe I start diverting my attention to other types of adventures instead of traveling. Who knows? I'm still actively trying to figure this out along with a number of my other adventure traveler friends. I mean, the world, actually, to be honest, has changed. Everybody's had to rethink how they're going to move forward in this future. I think that the world has revealed itself to be really on a thin edge of stability. Anything can knock it off, and I'm going round and round. I really am. I did very little dancing today, as per normal, for the last couple of weeks. So when I watch this back, I hope I'm going to kick my own ass in the right direction, because aside from dancing, it's a lot also about staying healthy, and I've still gritted it out every single day, dancing 2 hours a day, but there are some times where you feel it more and some times that you feel it less, and this has been one of these lesser times. It's just been a grind, a complete grind, and I'm only maintaining my output because I know I have something other than creative to gain, which is the health. The health then feeds into the happiness, so it's less of a direct equation. Of course, when I was enjoying my dancing more, everything was moving the same way because dancing was also creativity, was also happiness. Now, the route is curvier, but it still leads in the same place, so I'm going to continue doing it.